Welcome to the debate. Picture for a moment two completely contradictory scenes. In one, you have a heartbroken 19-year-old girl sitting alone on a bedroom floor at 3 in the morning, furiously scribbling raw, unedited confessions into a private diary.
Right. And in the other, a team of seasoned executives in a monolithic corporate boardroom poring over demographic data, plotting a, $123 million global takeover strategy.
Exactly. And the fascinating part is that we are describing the exact same album. When we look at Taylor Swift's third album, Speak Now, both the original 2010 release and the 2023 re-recording, we are forced to reconcile these two opposing images.
It's a staggering milestone in contemporary pop music. But the question that divides us today is, it's fundamental. Is Speak Now ultimately a triumph of pure artistic idealism and profound emotional vulnerability? Or is it, at its core, a masterclass in industrial mechanics, brand management, and IP survival?
Right, and I will argue that this album is an uncompromised artistic manifesto. It was born from a desperate, genuine need for creative validation. Every decision serves as a testament to the purity of an artist's soul, trying to navigate the transition into adulthood.
And I look at the exact same data points and see a beautifully constructed, highly lucrative facade. That pure artistic soul narrative you are clinging to, it is a deliberate strategy. It's industrial product management functioning flawlessly under the camouflage of teenage vulnerability.
Well, to understand the artistic achievement here, we really have to look at the psychological pressure cooker she was in. After her previous album won Album of the Year, the industry establishment basically came out with their knives.
They absolutely did.
You had prominent music critics like Bob Lefsetz writing highly publicized newsletters declaring her career was effectively over. They heavily criticized her vocal performance alongside Stevie Nicks at the Grammys. And the overarching, deeply sexist critique was that she was just a studio puppet.
Right, a product of the Nashville machine who didn't actually write her own music, which, by the way, was a massive existential threat to her entire brand identity.
Exactly. So what does she do in response? She writes a standard 14-track album, 100% by herself. We are talking about someone getting melodies at 3 a.m. in Arkansas, writing on the floor of hotel rooms in New York and Boston without a single seasoned, middle-aged co-writer in the room to, dilute her voice.
That is a highly romantic interpretation of what is actually a brilliant logistical trap.
A trap? She is grappling with real guilt, offering unprecedented, genuine apologies in tracks like Back to December. You cannot fake that level of introspection.
You don't have to fake it. You just have to deploy it correctly. You just outlined a massive threat to a multi-million-dollar brand and then described her reaction as purely emotional. That exact solo writer narrative was the ultimate PR shield. You don't neutralize a heavyweight critic like Lefsetz by simply retreating into your art. You neutralize him by weaponizing your authorship.
Weaponizing authorship? That is incredibly cynical. She just wrote the songs.
She executed a highly calculated industrial product. Think about the mechanics of how this album operated in the culture, dropping incredibly specific, identifying details about high-profile relationships.
You mean writing from her life?
The very obvious guitar licks mimicking John Mayer and the blues rock ballad Dear John, or directly addressing the infamous Kanye West stage crashing incident in Innocent. That isn't just a girl processing her feelings. That is a brilliant media strategy.
How so?
By embedding those Easter eggs, she guaranteed the album would absolutely dominate the cultural conversation and the headline cycles. She forced the press to talk about her lyrics, which entirely solved the problem of critics saying she didn't write them.
Look, calling the solo writing a PR shield strips the agency away from a young woman who had a genuine, organic creative urgency.
Does it?
Yes. She was transitioning from adolescence into adulthood. She needed to capture that specific, terrifying transition without executives handing her focus-grouped lyrics. It wasn't a marketing gimmick designed to dominate news cycles.
Well, if you strip away the romanticism for a second, you'll see the heavy hand of the industry shaping the very core of this supposedly authentic art. The executives absolutely had their say. Let's look at the title of the record.
Okay.
Do you recall what she originally walked into the label and wanted to call this deeply personal diary?
She wanted to call it Enchanted.
Exactly. Enchanted, a title that perfectly aligns with the starry-eyed, fairy tale aesthetic she used to sell millions of copies of her previous record. And what happened? Big Machine CEO Scott Borchetta explicitly rejected it.
Well,
He literally sat her down and told her the record couldn't be about fairy tales in high school anymore because the data showed her audience was aging up. The title Speak Now was chosen specifically to rebrand her for an older, more lucrative demographic. The industry dictated the thematic pivot to ensure market expansion.
Borchetta giving her a reality check about the title didn't alter the actual substance of the songs she wrote. You can change the wrapping paper, but the gift inside is still an uncompromised artistic vision.
It's a very calculated wrapping paper.
Frankly, changing the title to Speak Now actually elevated the artistic concept of the album. It framed the entire record around the metaphor of interrupting a wedding, right? Speak now or forever holding your peace. It became about saying the things you never had the chance to say to people. That is an artistic framing, not just some cynical demographic pivot.
It is both, which is why it's so brilliant. But, I mean, if we are going to debate the purity of the art versus the mechanics of the industry, we have to talk about how this raw diary was actually manufactured in the recording studio.
I am so glad you brought up the studio because the production mechanics completely validate my point. If this was just a ruthless commercial product, the label would have polished it to death with digital sterility.
You don't think it's polished?
In 2010, auto-tune, Melodyne, and overly synthesized pop were completely taking over the charts. Instead, she and her producer, Nathan Chapman, actively worked to preserve the album's analog warmth.
And how exactly do they do that? Because I hear a highly polished pop rock record.
They utilize something called the Endless Audio CLSP system. For anyone unfamiliar with studio engineering, CLS bridges the gap between old-school analog tape and modern digital computers. They literally ran her vocals and acoustic guitars through a massive 1979 magnetic tape machine before it hit the computer.
Okay.
They did this deliberately to capture the physical saturation and grit of real tape. On the opening of the lead single, Mine, they intentionally left the analog tape hiss audible. They used a vintage-style tube microphone to capture the natural imperfections in her voice.
Right. But why?
Because tape hiss and tube warmth create a psychoacoustic sense of intimacy. It makes the listener feel like she is sitting right next to them. That is the hallmark of an artist prioritizing emotional resonance over commercial perfection.
I understand the mechanics of the CLASP system, but have you considered that this acoustic analog dressing is essentially the sonic equivalent of an Instagram filter?
An Instagram filter.
Yes. You apply a vintage filter to a digital photo to artificially signal authenticity. You point to the tape hiss on a vocal track, but I point to the fact that the architecture of this album was explicitly engineered for global crossover dominance. You mentioned the producer Nathan Chapman, but you conveniently didn't mention Justin Niebank, who mixed the record.
Well, Niebank is a legend, yes.
He is a legend because he knows how to make things sound massive. He mixed those 17 tracks in 3 weeks, entirely in the box.
Right.
That means he didn't run the final tracks back through an old analog console. He mixed it inside the computer software using digital plugins to make the songs punchier, wider, and louder. Tracks like The Story of Us and Haunted aren't intimate acoustic diaries. They are massive pop-punk and gothic rock anthems featuring soaring electric guitars, dramatic string sections, and arena-ready compression.
But the emotional intensity of those specific songs required a larger sonic palette. You can't whisper a song about being haunted by a ghost.
The instrumentation was a delivery mechanism for a commercial behemoth. How can you defend this as pure indie-style artistry when the album's release strategy was a masterclass in corporate synergy? Let's look at the Target deal. In 2010, digital piracy and iTunes were destroying physical CD sales, so they partnered with Target to release a deluxe edition with exclusive bonus tracks.
Many artists have retail partnerships. That's standard practice.
Not like this. By placing the deluxe CD at the checkout aisles of thousands of Target stores, they captured the suburban foot traffic. They forced the superfan who might have already downloaded the digital copy to also impulsively buy the physical CD while buying their groceries.
That's just smart distribution.
That isn't an artistic choice. That is a double-dip mechanism designed to artificially inflate week one sales to guarantee a million-plus debut. They paired this with tie-ins with Sony Electronics, Walmart, and an Elizabeth Arden fragrance. The tape hiss you are so fond of is just aesthetic packaging to sell authenticity to a demographic that demands it, while simultaneously moving units on a massive industrial scale.
It is entirely possible to want your art to be heard by as many people as possible without sacrificing the soul of the art itself. The tape hiss wasn't a trick, it was a sonic reflection of the vulnerability in the lyrics.
I'm not so sure.
The fact that Target wanted to leverage that vulnerability to sell CDs doesn't negate the artistry of the creation. The industry mechanics you are outlining are just the exoskeleton. They are wrapped around an undeniably beating heart. Listen to a track like Never Grow Up. It is an acoustic lullaby, recorded live with just her and a guitar, lamenting the terrifying loss of childhood innocence. You simply cannot manufacture that kind of wistful melancholy in a corporate boardroom.
You can absolutely manufacture the delivery mechanism for it, though. But if we really want to test this theory of uncompromised artistry versus corporate strategy, we have to fast forward to the 2023 release of the re-recording, because this project is the ultimate industrial mechanist maneuver.
Wait, reclaiming your stolen art is a mechanist maneuver?
The entire re-recording project is an aggressive corporate takeover of her own back catalog. When her original masters were sold, she didn't just write a sad song about it. She systematically devalued their multi-million-dollar asset by creating a substitute product and commanding her consumer base to switch out the old inventory for the new.
That is self-defense.
That is pure corporate warfare. And if we are talking about artistic purity, we have to talk about the lyric change in the song Better Than Revenge.
Oh, I knew we would get here.
It is the hinge of the entire debate. In the 2010 original, she sings a famously venomous line about a romantic rival. She's better known for the things that she does on the mattress. In 2023, that line is entirely erased, replaced with, he was a moth to the flame, she was holding the matches. If this album is a sacred, unedited teenage diary, why is the CEO going back in and using whiteout on the pages?
Because the author of the diary grew up.
No, she patched a bug. The original lyric is a massive PR liability in the cultural climate of 2023. It actively contradicts the feminist, women-supporting women brand pillar she has spent the last decade building.
I wouldn't call it a bug.
It was a bug that would have crashed her modern brand operating system, so she deployed a software patch. Commerce and marketability trumped historical artistic accuracy.
A software patch implies a cynical corporate update. I see it as emotional refactoring. She rewrote the core code of her worldview because she changed, not just because the market demanded it.
Really?
Yes. Leaving a lyric that actively contradicts her deeply held present-day beliefs wouldn't be authentic. It would be a stubborn refusal to evolve. She has spoken openly for years about how she had to unlearn the internalized misogyny of blaming another woman for a man's actions. To sing the original mattress lyric at age 33 wouldn't be an authentic expression of who she is. It would be play-acting a mindset she no longer holds. That lyric change reflects genuine artistic growth.
By rewriting the historical record, the original album was praised and heavily criticized for its brutal, confrontational honesty. You don't get to claim the high ground of raw, unfiltered emotion while retroactively filtering the specific emotions that aged poorly. That is brand management 101.
It is taking responsibility for the impact of your words.
Then explain the removal of the track if this was a movie. It was on the original 2010 deluxe edition. But because she had a co-writer on that one specific song, Martin Johnson, it was entirely removed from the track list of the 2023 version. Why?
Because the marketing narrative relies on the gimmick that it is 100% solo written. The presence of a co-writer ruins the marketing pitch. That is an industrial decision to preserve a brand pillar, not an artistic decision about emotional growth.
That is a fascinating example because removing that track actually proves my point entirely. It demonstrates her absolute commitment to the original artistic manifesto of the project.
How does suppressing a song prove artistic commitment? The core thesis wasn't just a marketing gimmick, it was her standing entirely alone as a songwriter. By moving a co-written track to a different release, she is protecting the conceptual purity of the album. She is saying, this specific body of work represents my unfiltered voice, and I won't compromise that thesis, even for a song people love.
You are defending the meticulous curation of what gets included and what gets suppressed. That is the work of an executive curating a museum exhibit, not a teenager bleeding onto a page.
Even if you insist on viewing the studio recordings and the 2023 vault tracks through this cynical, operational lens, you cannot deny the emotional reality of how this music connected with people where it actually matters, in the live space. Because the world tour was a triumph of pure, unfiltered emotional connection.
The tour that grossed over $123 million?
Yes, but let's look at what actually happened on that stage. Consider the famous ARM lyrics. Every single night of a 111-date tour, she wrote different lyrics on her left arm with a Sharpie. One night it was Tom Petty, another night it was Selena Gomez or the Dixie Chicks.
Right.
It was a visual mood ring. It was a genuine, spontaneous expression of what she was feeling that specific day in that specific city. That is a vulnerable artist sharing her immediate internal state with her audience, breaking down the barrier between the monolithic stage and the crowd.
I look at those ARM lyrics from a completely different angle. That wasn't a spontaneous mood ring. It was a pioneering tactic in manufacturing parasocial intimacy.
Parasocial intimacy? It was literally just a Sharpie on an arm.
The New Yorker did a brilliant analysis of this exact phenomenon. Those ARM lyrics were a calculated mechanism to train the consumer. By changing the lyric every single night, you create a data-driven scavenger hunt.
A scavenger hunt?
Think about the mechanism. You force the fans to log onto social media every single morning to see what the new lyric was. Long before algorithms were formally dictating our lives, she was organically programming continuous daily digital engagement. It weaponizes intimacy to ensure lifetime brand loyalty. It is brilliant marketing disguised as a spontaneous diary entry.
You are reducing profound human connection to a data retention strategy. Do you really think she was standing backstage with a Sharpie thinking about daily digital engagement metrics?
I think she's very smart, yes.
When a teenager in the front row, who feels entirely alienated from the world, sees a lyric about heartbreak on the arm of her idol, she feels seen. That feeling isn't a data point, it is a profound artistic achievement. You are looking at the result, which, yes, was high engagement, and assuming the initial impulse was entirely cynical. The impulse was emotional. The scale of the tour simply magnified it.
The scale of the tour was the entire point of the operation. You do not execute a logistical maneuver of that magnitude across 4 continents based on emotional impulses. Let me give you a mechanical example.
All right.
When the tour hit European and Asian markets, they played much smaller arenas. They physically could not fit the massive theatrical sets for the gothic rock songs like Haunted or the props for Mean. So what did the artist do? Did she insist on preserving the artistic integrity of the era? No. She systematically swapped those songs out for older hits to maintain the show's pacing and keep the foreign audiences satisfied.
That's just adapting to the venue.
That is a highly tactical operational pivot to ensure consumer satisfaction in a developing market.
Of course, there are logistical realities in a global tour. Gravity exists, stage dimensions exist, but the logistics exist to serve the art, not the other way around. The production value, the set lists, the staging, it was all designed to bring the internal world of the diary to life. And if you want to talk about the internal world, we have to look at the vault tracks that you finally released on the 2023 version.
I agree. The vault tracks are very revealing.
Look at a song like Castles Crumbling, featuring Hayley Williams. That song explores the deep, isolating fear of losing the public's faith. It directly addresses the psychological fallout of the Kanye West incident and the leftist critiques we talked about earlier. It is incredibly vulnerable. It shows a 19-year-old terrified that the empire she built is turning to dust. It proves the emotional stakes were real.
And yet, look at the mechanics of releasing it in 2023. It was produced by Jack Antonoff. By bringing in Hayley Williams from Paramore and Fall Out Boy for these specific vault tracks, she tapped into the exact 2000s pop-punk nostalgia that is currently dominating the streaming market.
They are her peers.
It is an incredibly smart demographic play. She isn't just releasing old diary entries, she is perfectly aligning her unreleased catalog with current market trends.
Or maybe she just wanted to sing with her friends who are actually there with her during that era.
Look at the vault track I Can See You. It is an indie rock track with a modern, seductive groove that debuted at number 5 on the Billboard Hot 100. How did she package it? With a music video starring her ex-boyfriend Taylor Lautner, literally depicting a Hollywood heist to break into a vault and take back her art.
Which was iconic.
That is pure, unadulterated intellectual property warfare wrapped in a cinematic narrative of empowerment.
But the empowerment is real. Taking back your life's work from a private equity firm is the ultimate act of an artist fighting for her soul. The heist metaphor in that video only works because the fans genuinely care about the principle of an artist owning her creations. The industrial machine you are so fixated on, the Target checkout deals, the digital mixing, the tour logistics, none of it works if the foundational art isn't brilliantly, undeniably real.
It is a symbiotic relationship, but the machine protects the art.
The art is the fuel, the devastating pain in Dear John, the sincere apology in Back to December, the nostalgic ache of Never Grow Up. That emotional resonance is what people are actually buying. Without the artistic idealist pouring her actual, messy life into those lyrics at 3 in the morning, the industrial mechanist sitting in the boardroom has absolutely nothing to sell.
And without the industrial mechanist in the boardroom, the artistic idealist is playing an acoustic guitar to a half-empty coffee shop in Nashville, entirely swallowed by an industry designed to chew up and spit out naive songwriters.
Wow.
The art you cherish would have been destroyed, or at least forgotten, if not for the ruthless, calculated business mechanics protecting it and amplifying it. It is the strategy that allows the vulnerability to survive. If she hadn't pivoted the demographic away from fairy tales, if she hadn't utilized high-end crossover production to fill arenas, if she hadn't fought back with the re-recordings, the diary would have been lost to history.
So we arrive at a fascinating impasse.
A complete stalemate, it seems.
Speak Now exists at the exact, unbreakable intersection of a teenager's heartfelt diary and a CEO's master business plan.
They are two different realities coexisting perfectly. Neither of us can entirely dismiss the other's perspective today because both forces are actively at play in every chord, every lyric, and every contract. The vulnerability gives the product its immense value, but the product management ensures the vulnerability actually reaches a global market.
Which means understanding both the spiritual value of the art and the mechanical brilliance of the industry only deepens our appreciation of the material. There is always more to explore within this catalog. It leaves you wondering, when that diary is finally closed and the flimsy metal padlock clicks shut, is the secret inside the soul of a poet or the blueprint of an empire?